Hello coders, today we're going to be talking about developer relations and I'm joined by Adam Argyle, who is a CSS developer relations dude at Google Chrome. Hi Adam, how's it going?
It's swell. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you had a good week?
I've had a good week. I've got a lot of stuff done. Kids are happy. A new Harry Potter game came out. I'm casting spells. It's a good week.
It's a good week. Awesome. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about developer relations. But before we get into that, let's talk about your background. How did you get into web development?
Web development. I was hacking on computers back in the day. So I kind of got in, I suppose you could say, through networking and hardware. Mm-hmm. So I was building custom computers with friends, and we would network them together to play Worms Armageddon and Warcraft 1. We were kids just doing stuff that made us happy. And kind of later, I got into HTML and CSS really early. We had this like 0-hour class at my junior high. Mm-hmm. But I always did Adobe apps, and then I was always writing code. So I was very much a Dreamweaver user, like back in the day. Anyway, I managed the intranet at the school. I was super nerdy. I was getting really into programming. I was hand making GIFs. Nice. I was like frame by frame building. I remember showing a science teacher, I was like, look, I made the moon rise. And it was like, how did you make pixels on the screen move? And I was like, frame by frame. Anyway.
Awesome.
But then it was so uncool to do programming that I stopped. And I stopped for maybe 4 or 5 years. And I got into all these other jobs. I got into sales jobs. I graduated, and I like – anyway, somebody eventually said, hey, do you do any programming? And I was like, yeah, sure. And they're like, I got this site. If you can fix my site, it's broken. If you can fix it, I'll give you $300. And I was like, dude, $300 is a lot of money. So, in my pajama pants at home, I spent a weekend, fixed the bug, and it was a Flash bug. I didn't even know what Flash was. Anyway, I fixed it. They gave me $300, and I was like, I am changing careers.
Sweet.
I was like, I just made $300 this weekend, and all I did was sit in my underwear and like change some lines of code. It was a piece of cake. So I went back to school, and I went back to a community college for web scripting and database administration. Right. I wrote Java and PHP, and then a little bit of Flash. And by the time I graduated, I was not the smart one. Everyone else seemed to know how to program. It was really frustrating. Everyone was like, Java is easy, and they're writing all this Java. And I wrote Checkers and like some other interesting apps. And but what I noticed the most was that I cared about how it looked. Right. What I made needed to look nice, and other people just didn't care. They were like, "No, it did the math. Like, look, 10 is there in the." And I was like, "Yeah, but you could have made it easy to read. You made it real hard to read." Anyway, I switched schools, so I finished a web scripting and database studies, which is very computer sciencey, as well as database normalization and just database management, and went to design school and studied interactive media, web design and interactive media, where I skipped out of all the programming classes in the course and just focused on After Effects, 3D modeling with Maya, video editing, animation core principles, hand-drawn animation, like the whole nine. I just went nuts in like interactive media and typography studies. It's very graphic design and animation focused. And then the whole time I was in that college degree, so that was a bachelor's degree, the whole time I was working at an agency.
Wow.
I'd gotten a job at a action sports DVD distribution company where I was managing their website and their database and their emails and the inventory and the whole nine. And then I switched to an agency where I was building apps, and we were building Flash apps and web apps and blah, blah, blah. And I eventually became I graduated, and by the time I graduated, I was a senior web developer because I'd led so many projects at the agency. I don't know where else you want me to take this story, but that's pretty much like the end of school. I have all the pieces of paper that prove I can do the work.
Yeah.
I have a portfolio and I have things to show.
Yeah.
And then there's more career history after that.
So,
but that's essentially the groundwork.
So that sounds awesome. You've had a very varied experience with all sorts of different technologies and different things. That sounds cool. How did that lead on to working at Google?
So it led to working at Google. This was it. I applied to Google 3 times. Right. So pretty much where we ended the story, I'd been at the agency for about 4 years. And I applied to Google. I was like, I could go build stuff at Google. I've built a lot of stuff at this point. And I was like, I feel good about where I'm at.
Yeah.
I never heard back. I think I applied to like a UX design role or something way back then. And then I waited a few more years. I applied again. This was after the startup that I was at went under. And I basically had scaled my skills to the cloud now. So now at the startup, I was managing virtual environments. I was spinning up local development environments. It was just all container based, and it was AWS back when AWS was young. And I was like, I've got front end skills and I've got like full on back end skills. I'm like, I'm going to go apply to Google. I didn't hear back. But I'm still employable, so it's no big deal. Then I was at another company where I became a front end lead and just building more apps at a different agency. This was more of a consultancy, and I'd been there for almost 4 years. I was kicking butt. I was like product lead. I was design lead. I was like doing all this leadership stuff, and I don't tend to like leadership stuff.
Right.
I tend to get it because I'm confident enough and I'm articulate enough that I can go share and help people. And that was really my favorite part about being a lead, was sitting down like with a junior and like, yeah, let's animate that thing. Like, you got the UI done, but now it's the fun part. Like, let's polish it and let's animate it. It'll only take us a minute. It's really cool. And so I liked the teaching side of things, and I applied again to Google, this time with a referral. So this is probably the clutch moment of the third application that I had, is this referral. The referral, this is an internal person saying, I'll vouch for this individual.
Okay.
Which is no guarantee, but it does give you an advantage. Right. Of course. I mean, how could it not, right? Internal references are always way bigger than, at least historically in company I've worked at. I don't really know exactly how much impact it has at Google, but I know that was a factor. And so I applied, and this time I applied to a UX engineer role on Google Cloud. And this was a UX engineer role with a design lens. So it's kind of like design focused. Yeah. And went through all the interviews. So the interviews were really technical, not design oriented as much as I would have liked. And there was a take home test that I feel like I just crushed. And that's why I think I got the job. I think I got the job because the take home exam, I felt I just nailed it. I did very well-rounded work on it. So.
Awesome. I applaud your persistence for applying to the same company. I mean, I know Google's huge, but to the same thing for 3 times. What was it? Was it 3 different job types, or was it all? Yeah, it was.
They were all UI related, though.
Right.
Like my passion and what I really like doing is building the interface. And with any framework, any tools, any environment, I just don't care. I want to deliver something that is tangible and delightful.
That sounds good.
And that's the UI layer.
Yeah. That sounds good. So what was it about Google that sort of like, drove you to that? I mean, what is it with Google that made you feel like that was the place that you wanted to, call home?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I'd been at pretty much everywhere else in terms of like genres of careers. I was at a small agency that was 10 people. It grew to 150. So I got to see it go from small to medium, which taught me so much, just knowing what the small and the medium was. Then I was at a startup, which taught me a ton. And then I was at a consultancy that had hundreds of thousands of people. That taught me a ton. And what I hadn't really been at was a product company that was as big as Google. And what brought me to it was the attention to detail, the desire for high quality. And these are things that agencies tend to wear you down and get really annoying. It's like you're rapidly building so much. This is freelance too. You're rapidly building so much under these stupid timelines that you can't deliver good stuff. No. And it gets frustrating because you know how to do it. You know what you need to do. Just nobody's giving you the time. And so
Oh, I hear that. I hear that.
I had a little bit of frustration. So yeah, I was hoping that Google was going to spend the time and do the work and do all the things that a company without the money can't do.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear.
And in a lot of ways, they deliver. Yeah,
I definitely agree with that. I'm a freelancer, so I completely feel that pain. in some of the things I do, I should say. But yes, I get where you're coming from. So, we've talked about how you got the job, and we've talked about Google compared to other companies. But is there any advice that you can give to any junior developers right now who are, or it doesn't have to be junior, it could be senior, or it could be anyone getting into the industry? Any advice on applying to Google? Is there anything you could throw in their way?
Yeah, for specifically applying to Google, there's a measurement that they call googliness, and it's not a joke. And googliness has been defined in many ways. It's sort of a difficult thing to define. One of my favorite definitions, which also doesn't, so again, this doesn't include the full definition of googliness, is that that person at the party that's way too articulate and excited and smart, and it annoys you.
Right.
They're being googly. You're just like, how are you so excited about graph theory? Like, that's annoying. Right? So like anybody that can kind of like come to the table and just be themselves and you don't have to be outgoing. It's just this concept of, I don't know. Anyway, another way to call it is just don't be a jerk. Don't be a punk. Be a empathetic, mindful, sensitive, in-tuned individual that's listening and just wants to do well. Awesome. I don't know. It's a metric that they use. They judge you on it every step of the way. Right. And it's usually it's a personality thing, and it doesn't necessarily have to do with introvert or extrovert. There's tons of introverts at Google. So it's not like you need to be outgoing in order to be googly. And so here's the tip then is be yourself. In order to achieve googliness, in my opinion, I don't think you can fake it. I think what they're looking for is a genuine representation of you. And the more you're comfortable with the genuine you, I think the more googly you'll appear. So anyway, if you're applying to Google, very much be loose and be yourself. It's very easy to wind yourself up, be really concerned, try to augment. And I'd say don't do that. They want you as you are, which is one of Google's best traits. Yeah.
That's I like that. I like the genuineness. That's nice. That's nice. I ask this question a lot when I have people on the podcast, and genuineness is a nice trait to look for. Excuse me. So let's move on to your role at the moment. Your developer relations in the CSS department of Google Chrome, right? Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
So, in a nutshell, what is development relations? In a nutshell,
it is you should be the wind beneath the wings of a community. So you can be relations to any type of community. A developer relations being you're focusing on engineers, which even isn't as specific as it sounds. Like you can help. As developer relations, you can help companies, you can help project managers, you can help designers, you can help QA. Like sometimes you are specifically sent to help an instance at a company, like they're having a problem, and they'll be like, Google, hi, we're Pinterest, and we're having we're having a problem with our pull to refresh. Would you kindly send an expert to help us with this? We'd like the web to look as good as it can be, but we are struggling. And we can send people on site, very consultant style.
Right.
And that's one way that you can be developer relations. Another way is speaking. So speaking is a requirement of a Chrome developer relations individual, though you're not required to do something that's going to stress you out, because we also have internal things to talk about. Mm-hmm. And then making learning material in any kind of way that you feel is appropriate. So I'm tasked with CSS developer relations, and to me that means I need to make material that helps people write better CSS, understand CSS better, and all the things that kind of come with that.
Yeah,
Just make it look
yeah.
fun. For me, my main thing is I have so much fun building UI. I just want you to have fun building UI. So it's like whatever I can do to get you excited, that to me is the most important message I can deliver is be excited and stay excited. Keep the momentum of coding. Yeah.
So can you give like an example of what a typical day is like for you?
For me, yeah. So this is funny too. I can tell you what I thought it was going to be. So
yeah.
Do
Outside, that. Yeah.
Right? Because I've been a developer relations fanboy for a long time. I was just a big fan of Paul Lewis, a big fan of just all these cats. And from the outside, you're like, oh, they must have the coolest job. They just sit down at their desk and go, what would be fun to build today? I would like to just build an experiment. Let me just peruse the web. Oh, there's a little hipster thing happening today. How about I go build a little hipster demo-y thing? And it's so casual and relaxed. And maybe I'll go write a little bit of a talk today. This is so easy. I'm finding it's very busy because of all the things listed. So there's talks. I could even just like go through my list here, but I'm in the CSS working group. So I'm helping the CSS spec move forward. I've got my own proposals where I'm trying to help CSS grow.
Awesome.
I'm trying to help CSS grow externally. So in the community, in the public side, I'm helping it grow internally. So there's CSS scale issues inside of Google, right. And I'm in contact with those folks trying to help them out. There's talks that I'm writing. So I have 3 talks that I need to write. I just need to round out the slides. Really, I have the slides. I just need to design them. I've got my tool VisBug that I'm working on, which is like a visual it's like developer tools, but for designers. And so they can go to any website and have familiar tools. I have articles I'm writing for new CSS coming out in Chrome. I have articles I'm writing on layout to teach people how to build intrinsic layout. I have all these other engagements. So I am super busy. It's almost sort of a bummer how busy I am because there's so much I want to make. There's so much I would like to create, all this wind I want to make to be beneath your wings. But I have so many different things asking for my time. So I end up doing a lot of time management and time boxing to make sure that I can accomplish little things. But it's a lot of work. There's anywhere from podcasts to videos to articles to internal articles to the list kind of goes on.
Yeah. It sounds like you got a lot of things, a lot of different, cogs in that wheel that you're keeping spinning. A lot of plates to spin.
A lot of plates to spin. Yeah, I thought it was just going to be a couple. It's a lot. Also, this is partly my fault. So not all DevRel are this swamped.
Okay.
They have done a better job at protecting themselves, and they say no to more things than me. And I'm just so excited. I say yes to stuff, and I'm new. I'm like still relatively new, so I'm like, oh, you need help? I'll help you. Hey, you need help? I'll help you. And other DevRel are like, yo, I'm not helping you because I can barely do my own stuff. So I'll figure it out. I'm still getting my sea legs.
Right. Yeah. How long have you been doing this? How long in this position have you been working?
6 months.
6 months.
It's like half a year.
And have you been in other departments doing
I
other
spent
roles?
a full year on Google Cloud as a UX engineer on the design systems team.
Huh. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and was that your first introduction into working for Google?
It was, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was nice. Large scale team building on a humongous product. It's nice.
Yeah, I bet. Can I ask what the differences are between your current schedule is between what you're doing now and what you did then?
Yeah, when I was a UX engineer on Google Cloud, I had more meetings with local teammates. Mm-hmm. So whereas now I have more remote meetings. Those local meetings were much more focused. So I was on, our goal was to synthesize just kind of take in all the information from PM, QA, UX research, UX writing, UX design, and engineering. And we sat in the middle and we kind of helped glue it all together.
Right.
And create so whether or not that was creating a tool to empower other people, creating a prototype to unlock whether or not something was right or wrong, prototype to go take to user testing, And those days were generally full writing code, building prototypes, and helping out design and PM. Cool. And my role now is I do a lot of listening and going to meetings to help CSS grow in a much more communal way. So it's almost like my team grew and distributed.
Right.
So that's like the best way to describe it.
Yeah, I like that. Grew and distributed. Nice. So, what drew you to be developer relations? What was the thing that turned you on that compared to working on the cloud platform?
Yeah, so the opportunity was presented to me because of VisBug, the design debugging tool that I made. Mm-hmm. And the reason that unlocked this opportunity was that I was trying to convince Chrome. So I built this prototype, and I was talking to Chrome people like, hey, the dev tools are phenomenal. I'm a huge fan. But there's a whole bunch of people that's like popping the hood open on an F1 car, and they're just not gonna, you can be like, you can change the color of the Lamborghini if you just pop the hood and reach under the engine and tweak this little thing right here. It'll change the hue. And you're like, the designer's like, I'm not popping the hood. It's like, I mean, I might pop it, but when I look in there, I'm just not interested.
Yeah.
And so I was like, you need to make tools oriented towards this whole other side of folks. And while I was explaining that to them and showing them the prototype, they were like, hey, you're kind of fun to listen to. And CSS a lot, and our dev tools a lot. Hey, why don't you just come join Chrome? And I was like, what? That's like, that sounded so far away from me. I was like, Chrome, I can't. Okay. And they were like, we've got a UX role open on the dev tools team, or we've had this CSS DevRel role open for a long time, and we don't know who's going to do it. It's kind of just been chilling. And I was like, I'll do it. I'll do that. and so then this is the kind of swift answer for you, is that I have been waiting for a UI-focused DevRel individual for a long time.
Right.
There's been some, or UI was a result of what they did, but I don't think that was their full passion. And I wanted someone to sit down and just be like, let's bang out HTML and CSS because it's fun. Look at me, blah, blah, blah. I'll build this whole card in 5 minutes, poof. And it just is gorgeous. I was like, where's the DevRel doing that? Because we got 15 of them doing it for JavaScript. Like, where's and so that's why I took it. I took it because it was a role I was waiting for somebody else to do. No one was doing it. I felt like since I had expectations of the role, that I knew what I wanted from the person doing it, and I was like, well, then I'll just go do it, because I'm assuming there's other people that want that from somebody too. So that's why I accepted that one.
That sounds good.
I wasn't really looking. It was more that I'd built a tool because so maybe this is another thing, is I wanted to empower designers on the web to be able to use their same strategies they use in a design tool on a web page. And I suppose that's kind of DevRel-y.
It sounds like that was a very natural transition.
Yeah, it's like empowering other people. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so do you have any DevRel stories that you can share in terms of things that you've done or empowered, or things that you've built that has helped other teams out, or something like that?
Sure. DevRel is kind of funny, where you could write an article that feels real innocent, and it ends up just like blowing up.
Right.
And it turns out that your little idea that you had about it's usually a performance article these days. Like, you write an article, it's like, hey, I got this little performance tip, and all of a sudden people go, holy crap, that performance tip is amazing. And then everything blows up. And this is where you as developer relations can have this influence. This is why companies are paying so much money for DevRel. Like, Gatsby is a new tool that's come out, and it's weird. I think they have less than 10 people on the team, or they did at one point, but they had DevRel really early on. And that to me was a signal of how much value DevRel can provide, because consider this, you write docs, and then who's going to read your docs? like a dev is, but you miss a whole ton of people. If you have someone specifically on engagement of your docs and showing you how to do it, that's marketing times infinity. This is like a testimonial style marketer that's just showing people how to use your technology and your IP. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
So the stories are just kind of summed up as these are good-hearted folks that don't really ever know what's going to hit or not. Their goal is to just continue lifting, and they're going to continue lifting whether or not their article is number one or number 1,000.
Yeah. What motivates you to do all of this? What's the thing that's driving this?
I have personal motivations. They're kind of, I'm assuming, a little different than other people's, but I really so coding has changed my brain in a couple of really interesting ways. And one of the best ways is a confidence level in doing complex things. Ask me before I was a developer to go change something electrical in my house, and I wouldn't have done it. You ask me today, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I'll do it. I can figure that out. It's like no big deal. I'll just make sure to turn off the circuit breaker, and it'll be all good. And so I've gained all this confidence through engineering that pretty much nothing in the world is as complicated as code can get. So it's like, okay, well, if I can wrangle some of this really crazy code here, I could probably wrangle some other things in the real world. So that's a huge motivation for me, is helping people feel empowered enough and they get in a flow with coding that it becomes this really empowering attribute of yourself, not even in your career, because I think being a good coder is powerful enough in your career, but how it can trickle into the rest of your life. And so I'm really motivated by empowering people and just being excited. I think it's super exciting writing code, especially on the web. Well, really writing code anywhere. And so I want to help people write more code. And when I'm like, the only code you should be ashamed of writing is the code you didn't write. Write code, and that's all you need to do to get better. You'll find flows, you'll find interests. And so I just want to help share this empowerment and this excitement and this joy, and get more people into the industry to continue. Yeah.
Oh, I definitely agree with that. Yeah, that's all good stuff. All good stuff. Okay, let's move into the old cascading style sheets and start lifting the hood on that.
Yeah.
So CSS has obviously changed wildly in a very short space of time, in my opinion. I was just wondering, what do you think CSS is in terms of a programming language? Is it a programming language, in your opinion? Or is it?
Right off the bat, I'd say yes. I'm writing instructions. The instructions get interpreted, then they get executed. There's a flow. There's loops. I mean, it's like every primitive that you need is there. I think the biggest question is a declarative language a programming language? If all you're describing is what, and you're not describing how, I think that's where people's biggest question lies. They're like, well, if you're not telling it how to do it, are you really writing code? And I'm like, well, yes, I am, because if I show this to anybody else, they don't understand it, but the computer can, and the computer makes this into something really cool.
Has it? I mean, it's as I mentioned earlier, it has grown and matured a lot. Has it always been a programming language?
By the standards I previously described, yes.
Yeah.
But I agree that once SAS came in, once there was proper loops and not just recursion. So, this is something people don't think about with CSS all the time, is if you do P space P, you're finding every paragraph and a 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 but it's so easy to write, right?
Yeah.
And if you were to write that in JavaScript, that recursion gets really heavy, and describing how that works is a lot of code. CSS makes it look like child's play. So there's like a power hidden behind the subtle, gesture that you write. You're like, move that box 10 pixels, and you barely do anything, and it has this massive impact. But yeah, as we've gotten more complex with reactivity, with loops, with color functions, just really dynamic and rich powers, it's becoming more and more of a maybe traditional programming language that someone thinks of like a scripting language. Maybe that's what people really want to ask is CSS a scripting language? I'd be like, no. Is it a programming language? Hell yeah. I mean, absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, anyway, that's where I stand. But
awesome. What do you think is on the horizon of CSS? What's the thing that's you're most excited about?
The things I'm most excited about in CSS that's coming out, Grid has been monumental in terms of the way that I think about layout. And maybe layout is something I see us struggling with a lot still. We have components, which are like the bricks, and nobody really talks about the mortar very much. They're all like, oh man, I got bricks. Look, I got a pile of them. I just downloaded them from NPM. They're super rad. And you're like, okay, well, what are you going to build with the bricks?
Yeah.
Something cool. And I'm like, all right, what are you going to use for your mortar? And how are you going to, and then it's just like, I don't know. So I'm really excited about layout, and specifically in terms of layout, I'm still exploring and in love with intrinsic layout, this concept of letting my content speak for itself and thinking about my content in a much more rich way. And I've been comparing it recently to yourself. Now, you have intrinsic sizing. Naturally, right? If you and I stood next to each other, we have a different height. We have a different width. We also have different lengths in our arms. Like we can get really micro about it. Like if you think about your arm, like I'll just hold mine out, right? Like there's certain parts of my arm that are flexible. Almost like think about each joint is a space in a word, in like a sentence.
Yeah. You
don't really want to break the bone, but you're okay breaking at the joints, right? They're just like those are okay to flex.
Sure.
And so like your content has these mins and maxes, the maximum being the largest the content could ever be. So if you have an image, it's its natural width.
Yeah.
Right? You're not telling it what to do. You're just saying, hey, be in this space. And it's like, well, I need to be this big. And you're like, okay, that's cool. I'm listening to you. You're intrinsic. You tell me your value and I'll just put you somewhere. And like a sentence has its max content is as long as the sentence is, so it'll just keep going forever. But its min content would be its longest word, so you can never break it smaller than that word. So these are just like really, really interesting properties of the elements that you lay out. Yeah. And I'm having a whole lot of fun leaning into the concept of intrinsic. And the things that I get back are left to right never breaks, bottom to top never break. I'll never have overflow issues. There's all these like things that get solved once I'm not squishing my content into boxes, once I'm just orchestrating my boxes, but letting the boxes be decently self-sized. Yeah. So I see a lot of CSS over the next few years going to be moving towards this content-centric, intrinsic design. But in terms of like CSS exciting stuff that's coming out, Houdini is by far the coolest thing coming out. Like that is just going to game change everything. It's so rad. Just like, yeah, that's very exciting.
Can you talk about that a little bit more? As in, what are the things of Houdini which are going to change the game?
Yeah, sure. So Houdini, sip of my coffee, is kind of like right now you can't teach CSS new tricks.
Right.
You have to wait for the browser engine because the whole rendering engine that CSS works is just untouchable to you. And so what we usually do is we write some JavaScript and we go, cool, engine, I see you over there. You only really read CSS, and I've got some stuff that you can't do, and I need to grab the reins. And so we write JavaScript. And we write JavaScript, we create our own loops, and we do all this work, and we get really crazy with it. And then what we do is we have to wait for the page to load. We have to get our script. We have to go grab all the elements, do all the calculations, and paint them again. And all of this is outside of the life cycle of the browser, which means it's slower and it's more harmful. You're sort of shoving and shivving in some functionality that it's You can't teach it. So you have to continually only layer on top of what it does.
Mm-hmm.
Your only opportunity is to wait for it to finish and then go fix it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Houdini is this opportunity for you to be a part of the CSS rendering engine. This is you being included. This is, in fact, the browser saying, hey, I read this little name, and it's called Peter Fisher. And I don't really know what the Peter Fisher property does, but I've got some values here. And, oh, hey, look, there's a function. Somebody registered a function that is interested in the values of this property. Well, you know what? I'm Houdini, ready now, so I'm going to go ahead and call that function during my native render cycle, give you the properties, and expect some drawables back, and I'll draw those to the screen for you.
Wow. Yeah.
And it comes in 3 flavors, but that's ultimately it. It's you being included in the render pass, you having an opportunity to teach it a new trick, and not be after everything's done, but be included. And so anyway, that's a good high-level one, but it gets more specific after that.
Yeah, sure. So that's going to have tremendous performance gains, right? I mean, especially on mobile when you're on a really poor connection, and you've got half a page rendered. Yeah. So performance would be awesome with that.
Performance, you can teach the browser how to lay out something new, like masonry. You can teach it to make sparkle borders. I mean, you can sort of go nuts in a performant way.
Yeah. Oh, I'm digging that. Yeah, digging that. Do you think that we touched on mobile just a minute ago. Do you think mobile is the driving force of the innovation in the CSS world? Or do you think it's still firmly in the desktop land?
It's a good question. I believe, at least from what I see, is that applications are driving a lot of the platform moving forward. So a lot of new features coming out are native application competitive type of features. Mm-hmm. You could argue that it's mobile as a dominant influencer in terms of like good application UX and UI and feature sets that we're trying to emulate. So I could definitely agree there. But I don't think it's the only influencer. I'm getting a little lost in the rest of my train of thought, but the core of it was that the web is mostly being influenced by native applications, and so we're slowly learning how to do things like push notifications and screen locking and just all these like little things that native can do.
Well,
the web.
Definitely. That's the beauty of things like PWAs. It's you're allowing a website to behave like an app, which is something that, if someone said that I could do that 10 years ago, I would have laughed.
So I agree. 10 years ago, the best we had was like text shadow on the top and the bottom of the text, so it looked inset and chiseled.
Yeah. Oh gosh, cringeworthy days, but.
Yeah, things were very clunky feeling, right, with all the texture and metal and skeuomorphic design we were going towards. Yeah. Do
you think we'll ever get to a point where one can't tell that they are actually running a website rather than running a website?
Happened. Oh right. Yeah. In fact, I've been tricked, and I have a very astute eye. My eye, the reason my eye is refined, at least in my opinion, is because of how many hybrid applications I've made.
Right. Being
at an agency, being at the startup, which was a hybrid web application, which we didn't use Cordova. We hand rolled everything. Like I've used Cordova, I've used PhoneGap, I've like used everything. And so I know all the telltale signs that something is not native. Mm-hmm. That being said, I was recently, this is like a couple months ago, I used the GitHub app to do a lot of my GitHub or just a lot of my Git work, because I like making very visual commits. Like I'll be like, this file, here's what I did. It's hard to do on the command line. So I do that in this GitHub app. I've always downloaded it. I install it like a normal native app. But the other day, what happened? I noticed something glitched, and I was like, what the heck, is this a website? And sure enough, like I figured out how to spin up one of the dev tools, and there's the dev tools in this app I've been using for like 2 years. And I'm like, wow, this has been a web app the whole time. This is a web Git GUI.
Yeah.
I was like, that's amazing. They have fooled me for this long. Kudos to them.
Yeah.
It's definitely achievable. I've built prototypes too that if you launched it from an iOS home screen and I didn't tell you, I don't think you'd know.
Brilliant. It's such an exciting time. It really is. I mean, talking from a perspective of a freelancer, these are all like toys in a candy shop, right? So, you know, when you go and speak to clients and stuff, you know, there's so much more that you can put down as proposals and say, why don't you do it like this? Have you thought about doing it like that? And all, you know, did you know that the web can now do this and that and all this stuff? And you can attack problems in very different ways and you know, come up with different solutions because they are more available than they were, you know, a good few years ago. You know, hats off to Chrome and all the other browsers who are really pushing the envelope to get this out. I mean, how involved are you with the cutting edge stuff?
Super. Well, in two ways. So one way that I'm super is that I get these emails every day from the Chrome. There's like a Chrome email list that you can subscribe to that tells you when something is going into experiment mode and when something is shipping and other things like that. That's my favorite time of the day, is reading these emails where I'm like, Chrome is shipping that? Or this is coming soon to Chrome. And I get those emails. Those aren't as soon as you can get them because you could be on the team that's engineering the feature. Yeah. But no, I'm watching those things and I'm super interested in those. And then the second thing is where I'm a little less involved, but I'm still talk to these folks and I watch what they do all day. There's an internal team that their focus is bringing native platform features to the web. They're very articulate. They're very open with what they're working on. And the stuff they're working on is fascinating to me. So I follow them and talk to them all the time. Like just yesterday, I pinged one of them and I was like, hey, can push notifications have actions in them? When a service worker sends one, can you say, you know, like okay or done? Like, and they're like, yeah. And I was like, yo, you should build a game. I was like, you could build a text adventure game that's all on push notifications, all sent with a service worker. Visit this website, say start the game, get a push notification. It's like, all right, you turning left or right? And you're like, oh, I don't know. I'm going to turn right. Push notification goes away. New push notification comes in. The whole game happens right there. The whole game is web-based.
Awesome.
And I'm like, anyway, so
this
stuff's really cool.
That is awesome. I'm just thinking back to an app I built last year. And had I have known what we could do this year, I wouldn't have gone down the route that I went down. I used Alloy.js to build a very web-looking application, and we did that because we didn't want to employ, or the client didn't want to employ, two developers, you know, iOS and Android. So, which is a very common judgment call, because, you know, if you can do it in cross-platform, which does compile down to native stuff, but without all the complexities that the native can offer, if you don't need all those things, then you may as well go cross-platform. But thinking about the app now, I think that probably 75% of that could have been done in just a PWA, and that blows my mind. That really does. Yeah, that's
it's awesome.
Do you think there'll ever be a time where we won't be writing cross-platform apps? We would just be writing PWAs?
That's a fun question. I hope not, although that does sound utopian. I like competition. I also don't think we're that good at this yet. No. I mean, PWAs are giving us capabilities, but I think we still generally we don't respect software as much as we need to. And I mean that, like, consider somebody's coming out with a new vacuum product. They're going to go through maybe 50 maybe 100, and if we're lucky, like 400 vacuums before they're like, this is the vacuum. This is the vacuum that I want to make 1 million of.
Yeah.
And I want to put on the market. And, we don't do that with software. We go, hey, look, I made a vacuum. You want to try it? And it's like V1. You're like, sure.
Yeah.
And then we're like, okay, V2 comes out. And we're just so casual with early deployment of things. We let stuff break in users' hands all the time. And I don't know. So if PWAs or PWAs are what help us get away from that and start to build resilient software, then I'm all for it. So far, what I can tell is that tools are awesome, but they're no guarantee. You can choose a really great framework and screw it up. You can choose native and screw it up. Native is no guarantee that you're going to deliver something nice.
Yeah,
there's a lot of poo-poo that's native. So
these certainly aren't silver bullets. These, you'll always have that ability to screw something up.
Yeah. So I guess if PWAs are the only future, I mean, they're very capable. I don't know. I don't know what the future is. It's the future.
Yeah.
It's exciting. I mean, something's going to change. There's no way this is it. We're not done. Yeah.
Okay. So let's go back to a bit of the old cascading style sheets then. So in your opinion, what is the most underused CSS feature?
Do you want an old one or a new one?
Oh, go both if you've got to.
I mean, vertical align. You can try writing it, and you can put middle as a value. But I think it's not used because it doesn't generally do what you think it does.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that one's unused. Other unused ones that are really cool. You know what I really like is carrot color. Nobody uses that one enough. And that's so like if you're in a text input, you can change the color of the line that's blinking.
Right. Oh,
which is something that native apps do all the time. You'll be in a native app and, you'll be on some very, bright native app, and then they'll have a really cool hot pink cursor that's blinking. And I've seen people go, oh, we can't do that on the web. And I'm like, yeah, you can. And it's one CSS property. It's like a walk in the park. And so it's a nice layer of polish, but nobody really knows it's there. I like carrot color. It's cute.
Yeah. I must say I haven't heard of that. Hands up, I haven't heard of that one. I will check it out. And now on every website I build, there will be carrot color.
Yeah, if you've got a brand color and a CSS variable and you're styling the inputs, drop it in.
Awesome. So let's ask a bit of an odd question. If you were to rebuild your portfolio today, what tools would you use and why?
Yes, I like this question. So let's just recap how my site is built. My site is
actually before you start. Sorry, what is your website? Let's say that. What's the URL?
Oh, what is my portfolio?
Yeah,
my portfolio right now is really just a landing page with references to articles, and the articles are portfolio items. So there's client work.
But what is what is the URL?
Oh, the URL is argyleinc. Well, here, wait, I have a few URLs now. It's nerdy.dev.
Cool.
Or argyle.inc.
Right.
Or argyleinc.com. So argyleinc.com is like the 15-year-old URL domain I've been managing, but I got nerdy.dev recently and argyle.inc, which are kind of cool, little succinct versions.
Yeah.
And it's just a static site. When you hit it, it does this thing that was really – so I built a lot of single-page apps. I say spa. I say pwa, spa, flaw. Anyway, maybe somebody knows what I'm talking about. So it was built with a spa mentality because that was so cool back in the day to use Ajax to load content.
Right.
So the page is a static site that loads the header. So everything above the fold loads, and then everything below the fold lazy loads through Ajax.
Right.
I think it's even still using jQuery's Ajax to go grab HTML. So it's like a partial. So I have all these partials that get lazy loaded, and then they get drawn in, and then there's this and they get drawn in a masonry style. So that's the other thing is I needed them to be sort of JavaScript layout controlled anyway, so I might as well lazy load them in. And those render. They have a cool color effect as they come in, and when you click them, an SVG gets scaled up into view, and then the article is loaded in. That's pretty much the extent of the website. So very document focused. There are deep URLs, so you should be able to deep link to a destination like a client page and a few other requirements, but it's pretty light. If I was to rebuild it today, I would go JAMstack 100%. So because the content doesn't change very often. When the content does change, the whole site is cheap to rebuild. I mean, it's seconds. And then I could just throw that whole result of that site up on the CDN, serve it from the edge, and now I don't care where you're coming from in the world. That thing is lightning fast.
Yeah.
And there's pretty much zero dependencies. There's like a couple of libraries used. One is to look at an image and see what the primary color is in it and extract that color and then use it in the CSS for the card of that element. And then I think a couple of I had a video, a couple other small things, but it's really, really minimal. It's almost brutalist in its sort of its design, and I would pick a stack that, in this case, this site doesn't update very much. I'd go JAMstack all the way. Yeah.
Awesome.
So
yeah,
that
sounds really good. What kind of benefits of a JAMstack do you get? If you were to redo it, what kind of things would you be benefiting from using a JAMstack?
Yeah, I'd be so right now my articles are Jade files that I go edit, and then when those save, they output an HTML file, and then my main website loads those HTML files lazily. With JAMstack, I wouldn't need to lazy load because I could combine everything at build time. So I could go dynamically through a directory of blog posts or whatever, build those, and then take the result of those and inline them into the homepage. So I'd skip the whole concept of needing JavaScript to see the rest of my website. You'd see it immediately. That's not even adding that much page weight. Other JAMstack benefits is my content would be separated from my posts. So right now my posts and my content are very tightly integrated, and I could split those out. So I could sort of make a schema for what a post looks like, author that over here. So that way my content, here's an issue I have is if I go refactor my website, I have to go pull my articles out of Jade.
Right.
And then into whatever new template engine I decide to go with.
Yeah.
If I had split my content up to where I had, a headless CMS, or I had my content in YAML files, or I had my content separated from presentation, I would be more free to move about in a new front end strategy because my front end is separated from my front end content, and then I could iterate here and just consume. So it kind of abstracts the relationship. It allows one to move without the other one. I could migrate my data somewhere else and build a whole different front end. Lots of interesting reasons to go JAMstack in terms of performance. You could just great articles on it. I don't know. Is that good? You want me to keep going?
No, that's good. That's good. I'm glad. I'm glad you pulled out the decoupling of the content and the design, because I mean that's something that with these static sites and all this stuff, there is that sort of element where you are having to sort of code very close to the design, and it can be once you have a big static site with several articles, it does get a bit tricky when you go and refactor it, like you mentioned. In fact, in some cases you might have to write a script in order to pull out the actual content from the design. I've scraped and sanitized and and that isn't fun because it never works on the first run.
Yeah, it's one of those things that it's code debt, right? You're going to get somewhere now, and everyone will be happy. Your client will pay you, and then a couple months later, after they've written 10 more articles, all these new little edge cases start to show up, and that quick little win turns into months of baggage.
Definitely, yeah. It's the convenience factor that wins over, and then after that you start thinking, actually, I can't. This isn't as extendable as I would have liked. But it's a very trial and error process. JAMstack sounds awesome. Sounds really good. Okay, so are you able to mention any? Just going back to the CSS a bit, are you able to mention any of the upcoming features in Chrome?
Yeah, I definitely can. So there's a ton. Chrome is constantly riffing on things. So so we've got Houdini.
Mm-hmm.
Houdini is incomplete. There's 3 layers to Houdini that we didn't really talk about. There's layout, paint, and animation.
Okay.
Those are your 3 hooks that you can hook into the engine with. Layout is still getting worked on. So Chrome also just recently rebuilt their whole layout engine, well, half of it. And it's been that part of the layout engine had been around for years and years and years, and they just refactored it. So that's an interesting little tidbit. I don't think a lot of people know.
Cool.
It's called Layout NG. What that did, though, is that sets up a stronger foundation for Houdini to continue doing its iteration. So soon we'll see a layout worklet. We already have an animation worklet, and then we also have a paint worklet as well. Those things you can go test out, but what you don't know is that these are also unlocking other things in terms of CSS. So we have here's a fun thing to think about. Mm-hmm. And you can go preview this in Canary if you turn on a couple flags, is when you animate in the browser, you can say at keyframes, and you say you just create an animation in there. Now, what you don't really have visibility or information about is what's the loop like?
Right.
Like, where's the tick? Something is ticking that's driving my animation to progress and have a concept of time. You can go experiment today with something called the scroll timeline,
right?
Meaning the tick is the scroll position. So as someone scrolls a page with the mouse wheel, that sends information to your keyframe loop, and now your animation will play at the rate of a scroll fire event. It's super cool.
Wow. Okay.
But it's this concept that other timelines are coming to CSS.
Oh, wow. Okay, that sounds awesome.
Cool.
Yeah. My mind is going into various directions now.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, when I was at uni, we did all sorts of games, built games using Flash, using ActionScript and manipulating the timelines and having timelines in timelines in timelines, right? So you would have an animation of the button within an animation of another animation, and so forth.
Yeah, the movie clip concept, right?
Yeah. Wow, gosh, yeah, that's quite a game changer.
I think so too. There's more animation stuff coming too. Yeah, and it's crazy. Like, one of the things I proposed was motion blur. So I'd like to see CSS have a concept of almost something you turn on in a Boolean fashion. You just say, I want it on this layer. And then as that moves around, the graphics engine does the processing to determine how fast did the pixel move and how much should it be blurred.
Right.
Something that's impossible to do with JavaScript.
Yeah. Huh. Gosh. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Super cool stuff.
Yeah.
There's folks that want color functions to come in. So instead of using Sass color functions or other ones like that, it would be the ability to use them natively in the browser, which would mean they'd tie in with your custom properties, and they could be dynamically evaluated instead of statically evaluated like they are now.
Nice.
That would be really cool. So Chrome is also working on, of course, better dev tools. They're working on design dev tools, so being inspired by VisBug.
Right.
There's performance benefits and performance related things happening all over too. So I mentioned like the layout engine getting updated to Layout NG. There's still work happening at the layout engine, so they want to make it even faster.
Awesome.
Oh man, the list goes on. They have backdrop filters coming out soon. They've got scroll snap points came out, but now we have scroll snap points and the ability to specify how many it can jump.
Right.
So you can they're going crazy. There's a lot of teams doing a lot of stuff on Chrome.
So that this is going to get to a point, I think, where writing CSS is more powerful than writing an app in a native language. In some cases, I'm just putting it out there. I think it's going to get to a point where you can do more and far quickly, more efficiently in CSS than you could possibly do in say a native mobile language. Is that something that you concur with, or have I just?
No, I definitely do. When Flexbox came out, it was a competitor for me. So native layout engines like Android have auto layout. It's a constraint-based layout, and this is an advantage that they had for a long time. They were like, here's some space, distribute. Like that was really cool. We didn't really have that. Flexbox gave us that, so we had this competitive nature with constraint-based layouts. But what native doesn't have that CSS Grid lets us do is twofold. So first, it gives us all these intrinsic properties where you can create relationships based on the content that's intrinsic there, which is amazing in its own. But you have this ability to create very large layouts, and you have very expressive ways to describe how to consume the space on the screen. And so you've got this orchestration layer. I've been thinking of it recently like I don't know how much you know DevOps and backend, but we have Kubernetes as this really popular thing, and Docker. I see Docker being equivalent to the web component, or Docker being equivalent to a component coming out of any framework, and Kubernetes being CSS Grid, where it's the orchestrator and the thing that's sort of saying, no, here's your relationships together. Let me, you go next to here, you can have a relationship. And CSS Grid being the mortar, Docker being the brick type of thing. Yeah.
Docker being the brick. That is, I'm digging that. It's a lovely world you paint. Awesome.
I think we're past native at this point, even in a way. Like native, it was weird too. Apple recently deciding that they're not going to have one operating system that's consistent across their devices. They're like, oh no, our big tablet gets its own now. And I was like, oh, it makes me a little sad. I liked that they had this sort of uniform operating system, and it makes me wonder if the large screen was just too hard for things like a layout engine that wasn't ever ready for something that big.
Okay.
So I don't know. I'm curious there, but I feel that we have the strongest tools ever, and maybe even in the industry, in terms of laying things out and getting UI work done. We've got it made. Other than that, we have to target multiple engines. I think it's the biggest trade-off.
Yeah.
Native, you get to work with the platform. Yeah. You'll never have to mess with it on another platform unless you go code it for that platform.
There's definitely something to be said for working on native stuff, because you are working against the raw kit, and so you can get quite finite with what you can do. I think there'll always be a point where one needs to work on native stuff, but I think that there is a big push, a real big march with this PWA stuff and cross-platform. And I think that in some cases we'll definitely see we are seeing an overtake. And it's happening so fast.
Really fast.
It's insane. Like I class myself as a full stack dev, and I only do that for the CV and the job, titles and stuff. But there is so much to do with front end that I'm just not aware of, and it's scary. Because it's like I would need to really relearn a lot of stuff, because I still I would just code stuff as the way I thought I could code stuff a few years ago. And that isn't the case anymore. So, it's a very weird shift. I mean, we're going to have people who come out of university or self-taught devs who are more aware of the stuff that are people like myself who've been in the game for many, many years, who've been working on certain projects that are very pigeonholed. And so aren't aware, haven't been able to put their head above the sand, if it will, if you know what I mean. And it's always this case of, you're trying to catch up with yourself all the time. It's like there's another thing that comes out. Okay, I need to read about that, and I need to learn that, and all this stuff. So I
empathize. Yeah,
it's a very exciting time for developers.
It is. Yeah, we've got the most potential and the most opportunity and the most amount of tools and the most amount of teaching that we've ever had.
Yeah.
And it's still hard. Like that's one thing I noticed is that, so yeah, being in agencies and being at consultancies and sometimes being pigeonholed into building something legacy or inheriting some architecture and having to work with that. I was always split with how I thought about it, because half of me appreciated the perspective that it gave me. And a large part of my mentality is any code I'm writing is good code. It's healthy for me to be learning Ruby or PHP. Like I can go write any code anywhere and feel good and learn something about it, which I think is a little unique. But it plays into all these frameworks, like where sometimes things look really shiny and folks sell it to you like it's solving all these problems. But from what I can tell, it's all still really hard, and everything has trade-offs. And so I don't think you should feel bad about being in a scenario where you felt pigeonholed. There was plenty to learn there, and it informed your future self. And then your future self might try new things and then reflect back on what you learned in that pigeonhole moment, and maybe it will empower you to make a decision in the future. You just never know how this stuff all comes together.
Definitely.
I'm just like gather it in mode. I'm just like, give me all the knowledge, and I'll take it in at the rate that I can take it, and just I don't know, go from there.
Like a big sponge. Yeah, I like it.
A sponge. Yeah. Excited. I'm an excited sponge. Oh, I'm SpongeBob SquarePants. I'm SpongeBob.
You need to get that tattooed on your arm.
There's no room.
There's no room. Well, Adam, it was fantastic speaking to you. Have you got any other points that you want to raise? Anything you want to mention at all? Any social media links that you want to put through?
I mean, no, I'm decently vocal on Twitter. I share a lot of the things I learn. I study a lot. I write a lot of code. I write a lot of JavaScript. I write a lot of. I'll code in any framework anywhere. But ultimately, what I want to be doing is making UI and helping you learn UI. I guess, follow me on Twitter, because I'll be sharing some interesting learning materials soon that'll help you ramp up on new and advanced CSS stuff, advanced JavaScript stuff, and layout stuff. I have a layout guide I've been working on. I'm really excited about to help people conquer macro and micro layouts, because I think we don't always distinguish them. Anyway, the word needs broken down more. We need some more studies.
That sounds like another podcast. That sounds like another topic to another rabbit hole to go down.
Right.
What's your social media handle? What's your Twitter handle?
Yeah, so Twitter handle is Argyle Inc. ARGYLEINK.
Awesome. I'll put links to all of these in the show notes and on the screen here as well, and I'll put your profile bits and pieces in too. Thanks ever so much, Adam, for coming on. It was amazing to talk to you. And thanks ever so much for watching on the YouTubes and listening on the podcast. Happy coding, everyone. I'll see you again soon. Cheers. Bye.